Hi. Um, I feel inspired to share the beautiful words to read to you. Not my own writing. That's available on my website, sarahwestlove.com. But to read from the one whose work is not by the one whose name we know it labeled by, but the name that we know who is not the real author, Shakespeare. Shakespeare works. So I'm gonna start reading all the sonnets to you, and I'm gonna read one every day. I think that's the plan. And yeah. So like and subscribe. Let me know if you'd like me to read anything else or different. And I'm going to first read the preliminary pages of the first folio, which was first published a month before Mary Sidney died, which is 5 years after the person known as Shakespeare died. So the first folio was published, which is all of the works, was first published in August 1621, and then again in October, a month after Mary Sidney died, and then they were retracted and then published in entirety and completely in November 29, 1623. That was 2 years after Mary Sidney died, 7 years after the one known as Shakespeare died. So I want to read to you Ben Jonson's To the Reader, and just the whole beginning pieces that are very special. Two of the actors write preliminary pages in the first folio, and then a dedication by the great illustrious, actually it's to the author, a dedication to the actually author, which yeah, just amazing. So I'm going to share that, and then yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Kind of sleepy, but sometimes it's fun to read when you're sleepy. So let me know. Oh, did I just stand up and do that? Jeez. That's fine. Sorry. So, to the reader. And this is what Ben Jonson wrote next to the drawing that was made by an artist who was 15 years old when Shakespeare died in 1616. So when he drew this, he couldn't have known Shakespeare, because well, that's what's insinuated anyway, from what I've read. He certainly didn't most likely draw this when on Shakespeare's deathbed. So there is, in other words, controversy on who is actually this drawing, who it's actually of. And you can actually superimpose this drawing over someone else's face, and it's very similar to the person's face who I believe is the actual real author of these works. So Ben Jonson writes, and everything has a twist because there are secrets, and there are things hidden, and there are things that he can't say outright. And so it's couched in illusion and mystery and suggestion in poetry, and double meanings and triple meanings, quadruple meanings. So he's referring to the drawing that's on the cover of the first folio. This figure is the drawing, the person in the drawing. This figure that thou here seest put. This figure that thou here seest put. It was for gentle Shakespeare cut, wherein the graver had a strife with nature to outdo the life. Oh, could he but have drawn his wit as well in brass as he hath hit his face, the print would have surpassed all that was ever writ in brass. But since he cannot, reader, look not on his picture, but his book. So the artist can't draw the real author. So don't look at the image. Look at the words. And there you will find the real author. So the person who's in the drawing is not the author. That's what it's saying. That's what Ben is saying. Oof, little itchy eyeball. So then we have, this is written by the next two pieces. The two players, John pardon my pronunciation because I don't know, and Henry Condell. Hemming. Oh, John Hemming. So two actors in the playhouse. So here we go. So they write these dedications to the reader also. To the most noble and incomparable pair of brethren. So they're dedicating it to Mary Sidney's two children. So why is that? I just wonder. Oh my God. William, Earl of Pembroke, etc. Lord Chamberlain, to the King's most excellent Majesty. Do you know who the Lord Chamberlain is? The Lord Chamberlain is in charge of all written material. Nothing could be published without his permission. He's one of the closest powers to the King, King James. I think the Queen Elizabeth died in 1603. Is that right? So Mary Sidney's eldest son was the Lord Chamberlain. He was in charge of all published works. I wonder what that had to do with things. So, to the most noble and incomparable pair of brethren, two brothers, William, Earl of Pembroke, etc., Lord Chamberlain to the King's most excellent Majesty, and Philip, Earl of Montgomery, etc., gentlemen of his Majesty's bedchamber, both knights of the most noble order of the Garter, and the singular good lords, and our singular good lords. So, the two actors dedicating the works known as Shakespeare to these two sons of a woman who was a phenomenal writer, known of poetry and translator of religious works, and a supporter of actors and playwrights, and who hosted the Queen Elizabeth in her home regularly at Wilton House, and started the Wilton Circle, the famed Wilton Circle of writers, which still exists to this day at Wilton House in England on the Sweet Swan of Avon River. Right Honourable, whilst we study to be thankful in our particular for the many favours we have received from your lordships, we have fallen upon the ill fortune to mingle, too, the most diverse things that can be, fear and rashness. Rashness in the enterprise, and fear of the success. For even when we value the places your highness sustain, we cannot but know their dignity greater than to descend to the reading of these trifles, and while we name them trifles, we have deprived ourselves of the defense of our dedication. But since our lordships have been pleased to think these trifles something heretofore, and have prosecuted both them and their author living with so much favor, we hope that they outliving him, and he not having the fate common with some, to be the executor to his own writings, you will use the indulgence toward them you have done unto their parent. That's very interesting language. Done unto them, their parent. Mary Sidney is these two men's parent, who these two actors are dedicating. Everything is double, triple. They're just like laying it out, even though they're not spelling it out. There is a great difference whether any book choose his patrons or find them. This hath done both. For so much were your lordship's likings of the several parts, when they were acted as, before they were published, the volume asked to be yours. We have but collected them and done an office to the dead to procure his orphans guardians, without ambition, either of self-profit or fame, only to keep the memory of so worthy a friend and fellow alive as was our Shakespeare. But humble offer of his plays to your most noble patronage, wherein, as we have justly observed, no man to come near your lordships but with a kind of religious address. It hath been the height of our care, who are the presenters, to make the present worthy of our highnesses by the perfection. But there we must also crave our abilities to be considered. My lords, we cannot go beyond our own powers. Country hands reach forth milk, cream, fruits, or what they have, and many nations, we have heard, that have not gums incense obtained their requests with a leavened cake. It was no fault to approach their gods by what means they could, and the most, though meanest, of things are made more precious when they are dedicated to temples. In that name, therefore, we most humbly consecrate to our highnesses these remains of your servant Shakespeare, that what delight is in them may be ever lordships. Okay. In that name, therefore, we most humbly consecrate to your highnesses these remains of your servant Shakespeare, that what delight is in them may be ever your lordships, the reputation his, and the faults ours. If any be committed by a pair so careful to show their gratitude both to the living and the dead, as in your lordships most bounden. Well, I should read that again. In that name, therefore, we most humbly consecrate to your highnesses these remains of your servant Shakespeare, that what delight is in them may be ever your lordships, the reputation his, and the faults ours. If any be committed by a pair so careful to show their gratitude both to the living and the dead, as is your lordships most bounden. John Hemming and Henry Condell. To the great variety of readers, from the most able to him that can but spell, there you are numbered. We had rather you were weighed, especially when the fate of all books depends upon your capacities, and not of your heads alone, but of your purses. Well, it is now public, and you will stand for your privileges, we know, to read and censure. Do so, but buy it first, that doth best commend a book the stationer says. Then, how odd soever your brains be, or your wisdoms, make your license the same, and spare not. Judge your 6 penny worth, your shillings worth, your 5 shillings worth at a time, or higher, so you rise to the just rates and welcome. But whatever you do, buy. Censure will not drive a trade or make the jack go. And though you be a magistrate of wit, and sit on the stage at Blackfriars, or the cockpit to an arraigned plays daily, no, these plays had their trial already, and stood out all appeals, and do now come forth quitted rather by a decree of court than any purchased letters of commendation. It had been a thing, we confess, worthy to have been wished, that the author himself had lived to have set forth and overseen his own writings. But since it hath been ordained otherwise, and he by death departed from that right, we pray, do you not envy his friends the office of their care and pain to have collected and published them, and so to have published them as where before you were abused with the divers stolen and surreptitious copies, maimed and deformed by the frauds and stealths of injurious impostors that exposed them? Even those are now offered to your view, cured and perfect of their limbs, and all the rest absolute in their numbers, as he conceived them, who, as he was a happy imitator of nature, was a most gentle expresser of it. His mind and hand went together, and what he thought he uttered with that easiness that we have scarce received from him a blot in his papers. But it is not our province, who only gather his works and give them to you to praise him. It is yours, yours that read them, yours that read him, that read her, and enough both to draw and hold you, for his wit can no more lie hid than it could be lost. Read him, therefore, and again, and again. And if then you do not like him, surely you are in some manifest danger not to understand him. And so we leave you to other of his friends, whom, if you need, can be your guides. If you need them not, you can lead yourselves and others. And such readers we wish him. John Hemming, Henry Condrell. And here, this is amazing. This is the dedication to the author by Ben Jonson. The most rapturous love letter to the real author, which he cannot name outright. But when you study each word, each phrase, each sentence, and layer upon layer. But in this moment, I will just read. I will try to withhold myself from translating. And yes, to draw no envy. Let me read what he has written. Ben Jonson says, to the memory of my beloved, the author, master, William Shakespeare, and what he hath left us. To draw no envy, Shakespeare, on thy name. Am I thus ample to thy book and fame? While I confess thy writings to be such as neither man nor muse can praise too much, 'tis true, and all men's suffrage, but these ways were not the paths I meant unto thy praise. For silliest ignorance on these may light, which it sounds at best, but echoes right. Or blind affection with doth ne'er advance the truth, but gropes and urgeth all by chance. Or crafty malice might pretend this praise, and think to ruin where it seemed to raise. These are as some infamous bawd or whore should praise a matron. What could hurt her more? But thou art proof against them, and indeed above the ill fortune of them. Indeed above the ill fortune of them, of those that bawd and whore. Or the need I therefore will begin, soul of the age. The applause, delight, the wonder of our stage, my Shakespeare, rise. I will not lodge thee by Chaucer or Spenser, or bid Beaumont lie a little further to make thee a room. Thou art a monument without a tomb, and art alive still while thy book doth live, and we have wits to read and praise to give. That I not mix thee so, my brain excuses, I mean with great but disproportioned muses. For if I thought my judgment were of years, I should commit thee surely with thy peers, and tell how far thou didst thy lily outshine. Or Sporting Kid, or Marlowe's mighty line. And thou, though thou hast small Latin and less Greek, from thence to honor thee I would seek, for names but call for thundering Achilles, Euripides, and Sophocles to us. Pacifius, Achilles, him of Cordova dead, to life again, to hear thy buskin tread, and shake a stage, or when thy socks were on, leave thee alone for the comparison of all that insolent Greece or haughty Rome, sent forth, or since did from their ashes come. Triumph, my Britain, thou hast won, to show to whom all scenes of Europe homage owe. He was not of an age, but for all time, and all muses still were in their prime, when like Apollo he came forth to warm our ears, or like Mercury to charm. Nature herself was proud of his designs, and joyed to wear the dressing of his lines, which were so richly spun, and woven so fit, as since she will vouchsafe no other wit. The merry Greek, tart Aristophanes, neat Terence, witty Plautus, now not please, but antiquated and deserted lie, as they were not of nature's family. Yet must I not give nature all thy art? My gentle Shakespeare must enjoy a part, for thou the poet's matter, nature be. His art doth give the fashion, and that he who casts to write a living line must sweat, such as thine are, and strike the second heat upon the muse's anvil, turn the same, and himself with it, that he thinks to frame, or for the laurel he may gain a scorn, for a good poet's made as well as born. And such wert thou. Look how the Father's face lives in his issue. Even so the race of Shakespeare's mind and manners brightly shines in his well-turned and true filed lines, in each of which he seems to shake a lance, brandished at the eyes of ignorance. Of Shakespeare's look how the Father's face lives in his issue. Even so the race of Shakespeare's mind and manners brightly shines in his well-turned and well-filed lines, in each of which he seems to shake a lance, as brandished as the eyes of ignorance. Sweet swan of Avon, what a sight it were to see thee in our waters yet appear, and make those flights upon the banks of Thames, so that did take Eliza and our James. But stay, I see thee in the hemisphere, advanced and made a constellation there. Shine forth, thou star of poets! With a rage or influence chide or cheer the drooping stage, which, since thy flight from hence, hath mourned like night. Which, since thy flight from hence, hath mourned like night. The stage has mourned like night, and despair's day but for thy volumes light, and despair's day but for thy volumes light. Ben Jonson. Ooh, that's love, isn't it? That's love and respect, reverence. Beyond words and with words, these words of Ben's. These are some other dedications. Hugh Holland, Leonard Diggs, and James Mabe. Upon the lines and life of the famous scenic poet, Master William Shakespeare. Those hands which you so clapped, go now and ring. Your Britons brave for done as Shakespeare's days. His days are done that made the dainty plays, which made the globe of heaven and earth to ring. Dried is that vein, dried is that Thespian spring, turned all to tears, and Phoebus clouds his rays. That corpse, that coffin now, bestick those bays, which crowned him poet first, then poet's king. If tragedies might any prologue have, all those he made would scarce make one to this, where fame, now that he gone, is to the grave, death's public tiring house. The naughtiest is. For though his line of life went soon about, the life yet of his lines shall never out. Shall never out. Hugh Holland. Can you imagine inspiring people to write this way about you? To the memory of the deceased author, Master W. Shakespeare. Shakespeare, at length thy pious fellows give the world thy works by which outlive. Thy tomb, thy name must, when that stone is rent, and time dissolves thy Stratford monument. Here, we alive shall view thee still. This book, when brass and marble fade, shall make thee look fresh to all ages, when posterity shall loathe what's new. Think all is prodigy that is not Shakespeare's. Every line, each verse, here shall revive. Redeem thee from thy hearse. Nor fire new cankering age, as Naso said, of his thy wit-fraught book shall once invade. Nor shall I ever believe or think thee dead. Thou missed until our bankrupt stage be sped, impossible with some new strain to outdo passions of Juliet and her Romeo. Or till I hear a scene more nobly take than when thy half-sword parleying Romans spake, till any of thy volumes rest, shall with more fire, more feeling be expressed. Be sure, our Shakespeare, thou canst never die, but crowned with laurel live eternally. Be sure, our Shakespeare, thou canst never die, but crowned with laurel live eternally. Leonard Diggs. To live eternally, crowned with laurel, the writer's leaf. The greatest writer they knew then, as we know now. She was and is. To the memory and master W. Shakespeare. We wondered, Shakespeare, that thou went'st so soon from the world stage to the grave's tiring room. We thought thee dead, but this thy printed worth tells thy spectators that thou went'st but forth to enter with applause. An actor's art can die and live to act a second part. That's but an exit of mortality. This a re-entrance to a Bloodite. James Mabe. This a re-entrance to a Bloodite. Mortality, plaudidity. I'm not sure how to pronounce that word.